Hi everyone, welcome back to Simply Thinking. Today I was going to title this video, What's the Point of Life? But I thought that was going to be too deep, so I don't know. I'll see when I publish this, I'll try and come up with a catchy way of titling this video. But let's go through the simple things. You're expected to learn for maybe 13, 15 years of your life. You go to school around 4 or 5, you graduate when you're 18, and then you might go and do some further education in university or trade school, and then you get your job, and then you probably find a partner, and then you probably start a family, buy a property, raise your family, and then you retire. And then around 70, 75, you probably, that's the end of your life. That's the average human life, right? 80, 75, 80. So that's effectively what's expected of you, or what we as a society think that's the right way of living life, right? Obviously, there's lots of things in between. You can start a business, you can build a house, build things, you can destroy things, just restart again, and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's like generally speaking the big points of your life. And why do I wanted to make a video about this is, I have friends that talk to me, and we always look back and we think like, oh, okay, what we can do to change going forward. And like I always say, incremental changes that comes within, and happiness that comes within, right? Because speaking from experience, if you live the dreams that your parents wanted you to live, and you tick all the boxes, when you're in your mid-30s, you find yourself lost because you did everything that was expected of you, but then now that you've achieved all those things, you feel lost. There's nothing else to do. You don't have your own dreams. You don't have any goals, because everything that came before you was to condition you to live a certain life that potentially was most likely was a safe life to live. And so what do I want to talk about, and what advice do I want to give? And by the way, I'm the last person you want to be listening to give advice. I myself make lots of mistakes in my life, so who am I to give you advice? But I can maybe share what I think, and then you can take it or leave it, basically. So, um, anyways, if you leave it, then that's fine. But if you take it, that's also fine. um, all right, so let's go. I would advise when you're 18, 19, 20, and you're trying to figure out what you want to study or what you want to do in your life, take some time out for yourself, maybe 12 months, 1 year. Take 1 year out just to travel, and especially like low cost locations, South America, parts of Africa, parts of Asia. Definitely try to avoid Europe and North America, only because it's extremely expensive, and wherever you go, it will be almost the same ish. So between states and America, yes, there's lots of variance, but it's pretty much the same. Big shopping centers, big roads, lots of driving, lots of farms. If you go to Europe, lots of nice architecture, different food, but pretty much the same, but it's yet different. But if you're from Europe and North America, if you go to Asia, parts of Africa, and parts of South America, it will be very different to what you experienced with, and it will be more nature-based type of economies or and entertainment. So it will be mountains, rivers, and stuff like that. But it will be cheaper. I mean, for one, sorry, they grow their own food, so food is relatively cheap. There's lots of space, so property is again relatively cheap. Entertainment, there's lots of entertainment as well. Some of it nature, some of it just man-made entertainment. So you definitely get more for your money if you do those first, and then late in life you can do Europe and North America. Um, that's not to say that if you can, you shouldn't travel to Europe and North America. If you can, by all means do. But I definitely recommend going to those other continents because it'll be a different experience. On the other side of the coin, if you're from these continents I just mentioned and you want to go to Europe and North America, it will be very different to what you're experienced, and it'll be very expensive. So be prepared. But yeah, let's try to go back to the point. It you know my advice would be, yeah, try to travel if you can afford. And if you finish your trade school or your university, don't get the first job. Just travel, like I said, for the first year. Your first job will be very exciting. It'll be the first time you're making real money. The first time you can spend your money whatever you want. You can pay your bills and all that kind of stuff. But the honeymoon period, as we call it, will only last so long. After a while, you'll be like, okay, I'm bored and I want to do something different. But you will find very quickly that whatever you want to do differently, there will be a honeymoon period, and then it'll be boring. Then there'll be a honeymoon. It's like that. So I really applaud those people that have been in a job for like 20, 30 years. And I'm like, wow, just wow. That's a lot of courage and a lot of determination and maybe a lot of conviction that this is what you want to do in your life. But yeah, in your 20s is more about finding out who you want to be, and trying different things, be it food, relationships, traveling, learning a new language, learning a different culture, whatever it may be. Your 20s is for that. Your 30s is to look back and say, I really enjoy doing, thing A or thing B. I might do more of that and hopefully get paid for it, so I can live a reasonable life. And then in your 40s, you can start again if you failed in your 30s, and in your 50s, you can just say, okay, well, now I can really, specialize and dedicate the next 10 years to really try and make something. I start a business or make something, make some savings, and then in your 60s, you're eyeing out retirement, and that's about it. I don't know too much about retirement, but I'll hopefully know soon, one day. And that's it. So why am I talking about this? I see lots of people in my friends, my close circle, being a bit depressed, a bit disengaged with life because they've lived this, hyper desired lifestyle, and then they find themselves very unhappy. And it's a thing that's talked about in songs, in movies, in novellas, and whatever it may be, because it's true. Like, we chase money, and then we find out that once you've achieved what you want to achieve, it's not really that great. It's not really that rewarding. It's actually just like, all right, okay, that's the feeling, and you're like, what's next? So my advice would be, do not fill up your 20s with big responsibilities. And what I mean by that is, do not get a lot of debt, either through mortgages or through financing to get something. Don't over leverage yourself. Do take risks, that's for sure. You have to take risks in life, but do not take 110% risk. It's just, take a risk that's reasonable to you're comfortable with. So do not take a lot of debt, and do not start a family too soon or too early. Because in your 20s, I've seen people that would start a family, we could take out a huge mortgage, $500,000, $1 million, or 500,000 pounds, and they will have to work in a job that they don't particularly enjoy, with a boss that they don't really enjoy, but they're stuck and they're desperate because they have to make the money to pay the bills, right? They have to feed their family, they have to pay the mortgage. And although an opportunity might appear in a different side of the world, or in a different company, in a different sector, in a different part of the country, they might be restrained or constrained to go and do that because there's a lot of risk. What if you get made redundant? What if you lose your job? What if you don't like the new place? But if you're on your own with not a lot of debt, not a lot of responsibility, then you are able to take those risks, and there are reasonable risks to take, because if they don't pay off, you can just start again. You're free as a bird to go somewhere else. So that's my advice. If you can avoid, do avoid big life, societal life-changing decisions. That's what your 30s are for. If you want to take a big debt, provided you have some savings, yes, do take that debt to finance some of your dreams, either a house or a business. in your 40s, if you want to start a family, I know biologically speaking, some of you might not be able to do that in your 40s, but if you're in your late 30s, if you want to do it, perfectly fine. And you don't even have to do it. If you choose to say, okay, actually, I enjoy my life, I enjoy spending my money on me, I enjoy my life the way it is, and starting a family would stretch, I would have to stretch my finances. It would prevent me from traveling, it would prevent me from eating healthily, or whatever it may be. Then don't start it. It's one of those things that idolize it, or we what's the word? Escapes my head now, but it's we desire, is desire, that's the word. We see on social media, movies, love, and relationships and families, and it's all fabricated. Happiness, it does not mean that. Happiness comes from yourself. You can't rely on your kids, on your partner to make you happy. You have to be happy yourself, and then whatever comes after that, it will work out. If you're happy yourself, whatever you do, you will work out. So what we see in movies and what we consume from social media platforms, most of it is fabricated to play on the desire that this is what life is about and this is what brings you happiness, but it's not. Most of the people that we see on these fabricated scenes and frameworks, they might be financing that lifestyle through debt, or through a wealthy person that's backing them, either a parent, a guardian, a friend, a stranger that really likes them. But it's not sustainable. It's not for everybody. If everybody did that, we wouldn't have enough money to go around, and nobody would do anything, right? and that's my next point, which is, so what's the alternative? If I'm advising you not to fall into the trap of starting life responsibilities too soon, what's the alternative? The alternative is, ideally everybody wants to go start their own business, live off the cash flow, and follow the sun, right? Like those birds. Join the club. I want to do that too. But sometimes you have to make some compromises. No, actually not sometimes. Every time you wake up, you have to make compromises. But then it's the magnitude of the compromise that matters. So if you're super leveraged, compromised, then that's an issue. But if you make minor compromises, that's okay. And so the alternative is, well, do a job, any job that would enable you to eat and house yourself, and then you get some experience in your CV. And then you can, in incremental steps, small changes, get a new job and a new job, and slowly to figure out what you enjoy doing and what you like doing. It might be, some people like doing admin, some people like building things, some people like coding things, some people like saving lives. Whatever it may be, that at the end of the year, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you might say, I've actually accomplished something. I'm satisfied with what I've done. Then do it in small steps, because I say that in small steps because nowadays it's really hard to make something of yourself and to go big. It was relatively easier, and it's always going to be the case. In 50 years' time, people will look back in our time and say it was so much easier to make something of themselves back then, and it probably will be the case. But it definitely was, especially, let's say, about housing. To buy a property back in the days, you had to make, I forgot where I saw the statistics, I think in The Economist or BBC, that you had to make about 5 times or 4 times your salary, your annual salary. Nowadays, you have to make maybe 10, 12 times your salary to afford a decent life, a decent house, sorry. Food. Most of the developed nations are food dependent. With the exception of the large countries that can grow their own food, which are still developed. And food is very expensive, and you're not able to eat healthily. When we say balanced diet, 5 a day, all that kind of stuff, there's a price to it. And that's why most of us are gaining weight or not in our best health, because the food that we can afford is a cheap food that's not good for you. It's not always the case. Sometimes you can afford the cheap food, the healthy food, but it gets to a point where if you really want to eat organic, eat balanced diet, you won't be able to afford it. Which may be a business idea if you're listening out there. If you want to, start your company, try to see if you can negotiate, start a company that sells organic food, healthy food for a reasonable price, and try to be ethical about your business too. Like, don't get too greedy and try to charge people. Once you have enough customers, try to charge people more so you can make more money, list your company on a stock market, and then just keep driving the share price high to making more revenue and all that kind of stuff. Like, try to be reasonable, and then you have a long-lasting business. Anyways, so going back to the point, it's a bit hard nowadays to live those dreams, societal dreams, getting a house, starting a family, eating healthily, going on holidays. But it's even harder if you get responsibilities added to it. So if you have a family and you have a house and you want to travel, there isn't enough money, even if you have a partner, to go around. You'll be stretched and you have to leverage debt, right? You have to get a loan or use credit cards to keep up the lifestyle. So it's really, really important for you to live within your means. So you'll be happy and you have more opportunities that you can take going forward. So, okay, that's the trap. The trap is take on big responsibility and then you severely constrain yourself of opportunities, going to a different country, going to a different sector, quitting your job and just saying, okay, I'm going to quit my job and be 6 to 1 year without working, just traveling. And then when I come back, I'll find another job. If you have responsibilities, you're not able to do that. You have to find another job immediately, or you have to, whilst you're working in a job that you don't want, intervene for other jobs so you can find a job that you like, that can, you can afford you to pay for your debt or your responsibilities. So that's why it's important in your 20s not to fall into the trap of the desires. Whatever you get fed from social media, whatever you watch, whatever your community or your parents told you, you have to be really careful and try to make decisions for yourself. And I know that's really hard. It's easy to say but hard to do, because you grow up being conditioned by your parents, whatever culture you are. If you're the Middle East, Africa, Asia, North America, South America, you will be conditioned to think, act, and behave a certain way. And most of these behaviors or these attributes are play safe, get a job, get a house, start a family. And irrespective of the culture. Some cultures are more supportive, some cultures are less supportive, more forgiving, less forgiving, more independent, less independent. But most of the time, these are the common factors, right? And so you have to be able to try to detach yourself from those conditions that were engraved in your brain, and try to build a new reality for yourself. And we can, as a generation, we can complain about previous generations or the younger generations, but I think we should support, every generation. We should say, look, it worked for you in the past, it's not working for us at the moment, so we're going to change that, right? And then you change that for your generation. Hopefully the next generation will benefit from it. If they don't, our job is to incentivize them to change what's not working for us at the moment, not to constrain them, not to make it harder for them, or to be greedy for ourselves so we can retire early. You have to have a sustainable society, right? You need to be able to, people, irrespective of what they do for their jobs, they need to be able to feed themselves and house themselves. That's like number one priority. If you can, as a society, if we can do that, we will be stronger together. Because, as the common saying, as cheesy as it sounds, you're as strong as the weakest link, is true. Like if there's, maybe three or four billionaires in your country, and 70-80% of the population lives below the poverty line, as a nation, you're failing. As a society, you're failing. But if you're, if only about 8% of your society is below poverty line, only about 10% are millionaires or billionaires, and the vast majority is in the middle, where they are able to feed themselves, house themselves, educate their kids, start a family, travel. You'll be strong as an economy. You'll be strong as a society, because you want the middle layer to be really fat. You want a stronger middle class. You don't want too many billionaires and millionaires, because they don't do anything with that wealth. They just hog it, right? They don't add that back into society. You don't want too many people struggling to get by. You want the people that are struggling to get by to get moved to one level up, so they can be contributing to society, right? Either by paying taxes or by getting educated and clean up and getting a job so they can get off the streets, or be able to pay their rent, or be able to afford a house, or be able to travel, or to get educated. That's what you want as a society. And you can only do that if you're not too greedy, and if you make laws and legislation that helps people get things that they're traditionally would not be able to get. But if your laws are basically put in place to prevent people in a systemic way, like strategic way, it's like, for example, I'll just give an example before I digress too much. In the UK, housing, there's a concept of a freehold and leasehold, which I learned about the other day. You can buy a freehold, you basically own the land and the property on top of the land. Leasehold, someone owns the land and you own the property on top of it. And the concept is, once the lease is over, the person that owns the land has the right to basically take your property from you. So let's say, for example, you have to effectively pay some sort of lease, some sort of premium to lease the land, right? So let's imagine you bought a plot of land. You leased a plot of land from somebody for 100 years, 150 years, 1,000 years, and then you have to pay rent on that lease for the 1,000 years, which the person, you agree, but they have certain rights because they own the land, right? And then you put like a $1 million house on top of that land. Once that lease expires, the person who owns the land owns your house that you put on top of it. Obviously, there's like some legislation, some laws that basically prevents you from doing that. But it's a messed up system, a very old legacy system that obviously doesn't work right now for the UK population. But it's still in place because most of the people that own the leases, the land, are more likely to be the people that I mentioned about, that they hold all the wealth. They make it really good and nice and comfy for themselves, and they didn't really care too much about the generation after that, or the population, or their neighbors. They cared about their family and themselves, and that's about it. So if they own the land, they're very happy to keep getting paid some rent for the land, and to one day potentially through the courts be able to claim your property back, or renegotiate a really high premium for you to continue leasing their land to put your property on top. And I know that might be common for other parts of the world, but I thought it was a very, I don't know how to say it, but strange system, and that hasn't changed. And I don't know why it has changed, because most of our population nowadays are not born. I mean, I think we're born in the 70s and later. So if it's not working for them, why haven't we or them changed these policies to make it easier for people to not pay too much premiums to get on the property ladder? But then again, it obviously goes against everything I just said, which is don't get a property in your 20s. But I'm just saying, for the people in their 30s and their 40s, you should start campaigning, especially if you're buying a house in the UK or a flat, for this leasehold shenanigans to like go away, because it obviously doesn't work. It prevents a lot of people from buying flats or houses on leased land because the costs are too much, and if you're in the US, but before I go into the US, again, going back to life in general, we are conditioned, or we tend to be attracted to go to big cities, right? If you were attracted to go to São Paulo if you're from South America, or New York or Toronto if you're from North America, or California in this case for tech industry, or London, Paris, Frankfurt if you're in Europe, or maybe Switzerland, Luxembourg, Netherlands or Belgium if you don't mind paying high taxes and high costs of living. If you're in Asia, maybe Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, because these big cities is where the job opportunities are, and the jobs that pay really well. Obviously, your cost of living will go up, but you get to make more savings and make more money. But is it the right thing to do? We go to these big cities, and speculation on food, property, transport, entertainment is really through the roof. Like if you want to buy a ticket to go to the theater or to the movies, I think it's like $15 now. Whereas when I was a kid, it was maybe $2-3. So why has entertainment increased the price so much? Why has property increased the price so much? Especially in big cities like I just mentioned, it's almost impossible for you to buy a property. But the people that were there before, that created the society around those cities, they and their family benefit from these um, big speculations. Like I saw a flat the other day in New York for $1.5 million, and it was for you. I don't understand about the non-metric system, but it was about 22 meters squared. 22 meters squared is the size of a shoebox, and for a million and a half dollars, I'm like how has this how is this even an option? Like how have we allowed this to get this far? Um, but it's a classic case of greed and trying to make a lot of money for yourself so you can live the desires that people were feeding you. Flying luxuriously through a jet, or having your own jet or your cruise, not having to work a day in your life, which I think would be boring. But anyways, having a huge house. Those are the desires that make people get greedy, and make people get selfish and make it unreasonable for other people. Um, and what if you listen to this video so far? What was the main message that I want you to take away? If you're listening, and if you want to take away any messages, the main messages are: do not take a lot of responsibility when you're really young, because that would just constrain you from opportunities in life. Most of your opportunities are in your 20s. Do not flock to big cities if you can afford. Live just outside of it. Let people, billionaires and millionaires, waste their money away speculating property prices as much as they want. You can have a decent life living on the outskirts of these big cities, and not having to stretch yourself, not have to stress yourself too much, and having more opportunities. Live on the outskirts. If you want to start a family, it was really important, if you're an expat, to be able to live in a country where you have help from the government. But if you live next to your parents, if you live in your country, definitely leverage the help from your parents if you have family. That will go a long way. And if you want to buy a property, again, don't get too much debt. You just you go bold if you're a man or woman or anything in between. You go bold before you know it. In just the amount of stress that you have to endure to pay the bills, right? And that's when you get desperate. That's when you get depressed because you want to try something different, but you can't because you have to pay the bills. So again, what's the point of this audio? Is to tell you that there's almost an infinite amount of ways to live life in a non-stress way that you can be happy. And just because you're not following the societal standards of getting an education, getting a job, getting a partner, starting a family, getting a house, does not mean you're failing by any means. In fact, your parents will probably say, I regret pushing my kids to do things that they didn't really want to do, but I thought they would add value to their lives, because I can see my kids are not happy now. So it's really important for you to figure out what you want to do and what brings you joy. For me, what brings joy is looking in the back of the day thinking, I've done something today. I cleaned the house, or I coded something. I've solved the problem. I've done the admin. I've done some Excel, some PowerPoint. I emailed that person, got that information. I did something. When I go on holidays for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I just don't do anything for those amounts that long, I just feel useless, and I feel like I've missed something. I missed those days where I could be useful myself. So make yourself useful, make yourself busy, but with not too many responsibilities. By busy I mean doing sports, going to meet friends, trying different food, learning a language. Make yourself busy that way, and at the end of the day, you make yourself successful by attracting success. If you're able to learn a language, learn different cultures, learn how to cook, learn a skill or two, people would definitely pay you to teach them those things that you've learned. either language or cooking or the skill that you've learned how to do. That's what will make you happy, is being useful. I know that because I've been in places where I wasn't useful. I was just dependent on other people, and I felt unhappy. I felt like, well, I am capable. I can do things. Why am I not doing things? Why am I here? And that mentality of trying to change and becoming useful is what made me happy at the end of the day, I realized. But for you, you just have to find out what makes you happy. I definitely recommend being busy with the attributes that I mentioned, what busy means for me. And yeah, trying to learn something every month, every quarter, every year. If you learn one thing every year, that's better than learning zero. Just remember that. Just learn one thing a year. It could be, 100 words. I remember seeing this quote in a company I used to work, that it only takes about 600 words or 900 words in the English vocabulary to be able to captain a submarine. And I was like, that's not true. And I think that it's true. I remember checking Wikipedia and it's like, oh, I think it is true. Like, if you know 1,000 words, and 1,000 words, if you learn one word a day in a different language, it's about 365 days, about 600, it's about 3 years. In 3 years, you'll be able to captain a ship or a submarine in a different language, at least in the English language. And that's a really good achievement. So yeah, what's the whole point, so I can conclude this video, is there is no right or wrong way of living life, but I think you tend to lean more on the unsustainable, unhappy way of living life if you conform to societal standards. If you try to conform, if you push yourself to conform, you will be a lot less happy and a lot less successful. But if you try to just be yourself, find something that makes you happy, even if you don't get paid lots of money, even if you don't have the nice big house at the end of it, but you're happy, you'll be more successful and have less regrets later in life. And take it from me, because I do have regrets, because I try to conform to societal standards, try to succeed in the eyes of my parents, and I made myself unhappy in that journey. And I'm not alone. I've seen lots of people doing that and saying that. So this is my advice for you listening out there, that try to play by your own tune, play by your own cards, and not over leverage yourself, and just try to take every day by the day. Don't live in the future, don't live in the past. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. Remember that. Every time you're experiencing a low part of your life, remember that it's hard for everybody. It's not just for you. It's hard for everybody, but you have to try and live today. Make that phone call to that friend. Make amends with the friend that you had a fight with in the past, with your parents, your guardian, your local community. Make amends. Try to live life in the present and not too much in the future. When I make money, when I have that house, when I have that family, when I make that trip, live now, right? And you'll be happy. And that's it. That's the end of today's audio. I hope I've added some value. If not, please let me know in the commentary. I'm sure you would do. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.